Former LSU cornerbacks coach and most recently the cornerbacks coach at Florida, Corey Raymond, is making his return to Baton Rouge. Now, I understand a lot of LSU fans are excited about Corey Raymond's return. He's really a huge part of the reason why LSU has been known as DBU for the longest time. But what can Corey Raymond bring back to LSU? And rather, who can Corey Raymond bring to LSU?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out on YouTube as well. So if you're driving around, running errands, pop those AirPods in. You can just listen to the podcast. Or if you want to throw the podcast up and watch it on your smart TV, on your laptop, on your phone, however you'd like to watch, you can also do that on YouTube. Just search Locked On LSU in the search bar, hit that subscribe button, and then you'll get notifications as soon as new podcasts drop. So you'll get up-to-date information of everything that we touch on here on Locked On LSU. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I am your host, as I am every single day. I graduated from LSU. I've been covering LSU football since 2015. I do local sports talk radio in Nashville, and I also do college sports radio on Sirius XM. But I always appreciate you for being here. Always appreciate you for making us your first listen every single day. There would be no podcast without you. So I cannot emphasize enough how much I appreciate you all for being here and for interacting with the podcast. All right. Today's edition of Locked On LSU is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. So that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, Brian Kelly, as we have noticed over the last week, 2 weeks or so, he is completely overhauling, revamping, and upgrading the entire defensive coaching staff. It started with Blake Baker, bringing Blake Baker, the former Missouri defensive coordinator, back to Baton Rouge. Yes, absolutely back to Baton Rouge. Bringing Bo Davis, Texas defensive line coach, also back to Baton Rouge as he played his college years in the purple and gold and started off his coaching career as a GA at LSU. Brought in Kevin Peoples to be the co-defensive line coach. And he has added yet another one again. Because Corey Raymond, who coached LSU DBs from 2012 to 2022, or 2021 was his last season at LSU, he is coming back to LSU. Now, Corey Raymond has most recently served as the cornerbacks coach of Florida. We will get into that. I know that this is a move that so many LSU fans have been begging, groveling, pleading for. And I get it. This defense was so atrocious, so atrocious that you were completely entitled to want whoever you wanted to come back to Baton Rouge just because you hoped it could make things better. Like at one point, I was like, I don't know, do you want to bring in, my 14-year-old cousin to coordinate the defense? Because that might be better than what Matt House has given us. And I get it. And I'm not comparing Corey Raymond to my 14-year-old cousin. You get it. You understand the gist. I understand that this is a move that makes a lot of LSU fans happy because it's kind of human nature, right? You have someone that has brought you so much success that brings you back to kind of the golden years or one of the golden eras in the history of LSU football. I totally understand why so many LSU fans are so excited to have Corey Raymond back. It's a move that I know that you love, and it's for good reason. First and foremost, what is LSU? What is the moniker that we call LSU so many times that we've gotten away from, and that is DBU, Defensive Back University, that Corey Raymond has recruited, coached, and coached up some of the best defensive backs in the history of the SEC of college football that are making splashes on Sundays in the NFL, whether it's Jamal Adams, whether it's Delpit, whether it's Tre'Davious White, whether it's Derek Stingley. Do you know how depressing it is to watch Derek Stingley play for the Texans and think back on, man, I remember when he used to do that for my team. I don't see my team doing that anymore. So Corey Raymond has brought through some of the best DBs, of course, in this program's history. But you look across the SEC, I mean, name a more star-studded group than that. That under Corey Raymond, more years than not, you had a top 25 pass defense. You had all first team All-Americans scattered across this team. I mean, in 2012, you had a top 30 pass defense. Eric Reid, All-American season. In 2013, you had the 14th ranked pass defense. 2014, you had the third best pass defense in America. You know, in 2016, 23rd best pass defense in America. 2017, 14, so on and so forth. You get my point. DBU was the nickname for LSU for a reason. And it's really, in large part, due to what Corey Raymond brought to that room. Not just the coaching, but also the recruiting as well. I mean, Corey Raymond has been such a fantastic recruiter for LSU. I mean, you look at, if you go to this was a really fun kind of breakdown for me to do, just to kind of give myself context to how many the just star-studded names he brought into this program. So I went to 247.com, 247sports.com, search Corey Raymond, and you can see a complete list of all of the players that Corey Raymond recruited. And it's not just Corey Raymond single-handedly. Of course, it's the head coaches and the D coordinators and the program selling itself as a whole. But you look at Trey White, Eli Ricks, who was a 5-star recruit, Jamal Adams, 5-star recruit, Christian Fulton, 5-star recruit, second-round pick, Jacoby Stevens, who was a 5-star recruit, Kerry Vincent, who was a 5-star recruit, and of course, those individual players in their times at LSU, you know, some did more than others. Maybe some were more splashy than others. Some have been more splashy on Sundays than others. But you see those names. I mean, it's 5 stars, 4 stars across the country that Corey Raymond is in, at least in small part, if not in large part, if not entirely responsible for bringing into LSU. And it's not just DBs. Like I noticed on the list, you know, he was responsible for recruiting Kayshon Boutte as well, several receivers throughout the years at LSU. So Corey Raymond's track record at LSU and his resume at LSU speaks for itself. And what is this secondary and this defense lacking so much in? And what was it missing so much this past season? It's talent, first and foremost. It was personnel issues, and it was also coaching issues as well. The tackling was horrendous. Players were in the wrong place at the wrong time constantly. They just looked confused, poorly coached, and probably, really for the most part, a lot of those players that we saw playing in the secondary for LSU this past year maybe just frankly just weren't good enough. That's what Corey Raymond can help you with, bringing in good players and coaching up those players to their full potential. So, look, it's a big get for LSU. But there is a but here. I do have some questions. And I think it's fair to question Corey Raymond's, not just the entirety of his resume, but his body of work over the last 4 seasons. And I want to get into that coming up next after just a few words from our sponsors. All right, I want to tell you about LinkedIn. So these days, every new hire can feel like a really high stakes wager for your small business. And at the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question: what can I do to help take my business to the next level in 2024? A lot of times, that next thing is the right person that you bring into your company. And LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team that you surround yourself with. That is why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn also is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than a billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. And it's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidates within 24 hours. I mean, achieving your goals in this new year, it's about getting the right people in place to help you kind of get your business to the next level. It's also surrounding yourself with the people that are motivated, the people that are aligned in your vision. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time, the money, or the resources to hire. So thankfully with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and it's easy. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, y'all. Thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And we, of course, are part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. And some exciting things happening over the Locked On Network because we have launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So it's official. LSU is bringing Corey Raymond back to Baton Rouge. Now, at the time of recording, there hasn't been a specific job title that's been worked out for Corey Raymond quite yet. Could it be just the secondary coach? Will it be the cornerbacks coach? We just aren't quite sure yet, but what we know for certain is going to be working with the secondary, and he's also going to be assisting a lot, and probably, I would have to guess, in recruiting, since it is one of the big feathers in his cap, since it is something that he is known for and has been known for throughout his time at LSU. So unclear exactly what the job title is, but job title, schmob schmeidel, we know what he's going to be doing. And Corey Raymond, it's a massive pickup for this defensive staff that Brian Kelly is building. It's star-studded defensive staff that Brian Kelly is building. We all know how invaluable Corey Raymond has been to LSU's growth and building the defense over the last 10 years since he got to LSU in 2012. But I do have some questions, and I think they're fair questions to ask. At this point in his career, we have seen back to back to back to back poor showings from Corey Raymond coach secondaries. So my question is, does Corey Raymond still have now what he had through those years of success at LSU? His last 2 years at LSU, 2020 and 2021, of course, he decided to leave LSU and go to Florida when Brian Kelly was hired. In 2020, we know how miserable that defense was. The Bo Pelini defense, he had the 99th ranked pass defense in the country. So look, Bo Pelini was a horrendous defensive coordinator. I get it. That's a pretty bad secondary. It's a pretty bad secondary. And I know that you were dealing with a lot of roster attrition after that 2019 season. Players either declared for the NFL draft or opted out of the 2020 weird COVID season. I understand that it could have been more of a talent deficiency thing. 2021, you had the 70th ranked pass defense in college football. It's not very good. Other than the 99th ranked pass defense in college football the year prior, that was the worst pass defense that LSU had since Corey Raymond got to Baton Rouge. And it's not good enough. That's not, if the pass defense is 70th in the country this upcoming season, I mean, we've got a serious, panic button situation on our hands. That you can't go back-to-back seasons with the pass defense and the defense as a whole being as bad as it was this past year. Then Corey Raymond goes to Florida. In 2022, his first year at Florida, had the 84th ranked pass defense in college football, giving up 236 pass yards a game. This past year, 70th, again, ranked pass defense in America, giving up 227 pass yards per game. Just to put that into perspective, this past year, LSU was giving up about 255. So that's about a 30-yard difference, which this is a game of inches. 30 yards is substantial, but still not very good. In Florida, won 5 games this year, in large part because the defense was trash. I mean, we saw Jaden Daniels pop off for almost 400 passing yards against that Florida secondary and then added plenty on the ground as well. That Jaden Daniels may have had his best game of his college career against that Florida defense. Look at KJ Jefferson against Florida this past year. KJ Jefferson had his second highest passing yard total of the season against Florida in that secondary. He passed for 255 yards that day. And KJ Jefferson's not really a slinging around the ball guy, the yard kind of guy anyway. What was his first best? That was LSU, where he threw for 289 yards, and we remember that game. So I haven't been really impressed with the showings of Corey Raymond secondaries. And it's not just this past year. It's not just at Florida. It was in the final 2 years at LSU as well. Now, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe some explanation as to why his secondaries were struggling as much as they were. Now, I can look at his time at Florida and say it could have been an Austin Armstrong thing. Austin Armstrong, defensive coordinator at Florida. He's young. He's inexperienced. Could that have played a factor? That he and Austin Armstrong maybe weren't completely on the same page. Whether it was the style of coaching, whether it was the defensive scheme, whatever it might have been. Could it have been where Corey Raymond and Austin Armstrong simply were not a very good fit? That could be the case. Because the rest of the defense would paint a picture of a defensive coordinator that maybe wasn't very good. Could it have been a talent thing? I mentioned the attrition after the 2019 season, so 2020 and 2021. You had players entering the transfer portal, players opting out, players declaring for the NFL draft. I mean, we remember that offseason between 2019 and 2020. It was like you were losing the entire team. So was it a talent issue at LSU? And then the COVID year hit and recruiting was weird and the team wasn't very good and it was a lot harder to recruit to LSU. Was it the same thing at Florida where Dan Mullen gets fired, Billy Napier comes in, you have a ton of roster attrition at Florida. Maybe Billy Napier isn't bringing in the same amount of talent that maybe Corey Raymond was accustomed to having in his best years at LSU. Could it have been a talent issue at both LSU and Florida? That very much so could be the case. But it's not like he's going to be walking into a DB room with all the 5 stars in the world. It's not like he's going to be walking into a cornerbacks room with all kinds of players and depth on depth on depth. No. You're kind of at this point, of course, you can still pick up players through the transfer portal. You still have a spring window that'll be open where you can pick up some more talent, some more players. But really, for the most part, what you got is what you're going to get. I hope that's not the case. But just based off of what we know right now, there's not a lot of depth in those rooms. You hope that these young guys, like maybe a Javen Toviano, for example, can take leaps and bounds forward. That the limited experience that they got this past year is enough to kind of lay the foundation. And a coach like Corey Raymond can take them to that next level. That's at least what I hope. I don't know how much I can really count on that and how many of my eggs I'm willing to put into that basket. But Corey Raymond is going to have a really difficult test ahead of him. Because you're also lacking depth on the defensive line. And if you can't get to the quarterback, what does that do? That makes the secondary's job that much more difficult. We saw that this past year, that LSU struggled to get to the quarterback, that when you gave the quarterback time to throw, well, it was, you pick your poison out there because he probably got busted coverage all over the place. So it's all connected. And at this point, Corey Raymond is going to have to work a little bit of magic with those corners. So it should be interesting to see. Look, I'm not hating on Corey Raymond. I still think this is a really big pickup, especially in terms of recruiting, that you can't afford to lose out on the 4 and the 5-star DBs moving forward. It's big in recruiting now that the transfer portal, you can pick up through the transfer portal that schools like Washington or Alabama, the transfer portal window is open for them. So it's a really critical time in terms of roster building and building up depth depth. And that's what Corey Raymond is going to be walking into. He's not going to be able to walk in, kind of kick his feet up, reacclimate himself. No, it's you're hitting the ground running. And you're doing so because this secondary is in such rough shape. So is DBU coming back to LSU? We'll see. Because the godfather of DBU is coming back to LSU. And it's not going to be easy. Nor do I expect it to be completely transformed overnight. But what I do expect is progress. You can't afford to get worse. And I'm not going to say that it's impossible to get worse, because every time I say that about any team, it just happens to get worse. So I'm not going to say that, but you just can't afford for it to get worse. Brian Kelly can't afford for it to get worse. This team, this program cannot afford any more damage to the defense than maybe this past year has already done. But coming up next, I mentioned how Corey Raymond is such a good recruiter and how much respect he has amongst high school coaches, how high school players absolutely adore him, and his track record speaks for himself. I listed off, at least 10 5 stars and names that you probably know very well, household names at LSU that came to Baton Rouge because Corey Raymond was part of their recruitment. Who could be the next now that Corey Raymond is back at LSU? And allow me to shoot for the moon, reach for the stars, and make a very big wish. And I'll explain who I'm talking about coming up next after just a few words from our sponsors. All right, I want to tell you about FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there is still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We've got the divisional round of the playoffs coming up this weekend, and right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is also so super easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet. You got same game parlays. So if you're watching the games on Saturday and Sunday, we'll pull up FanDuel and see if there's any fun parlays or fun bets that you want to place while watching the game live. You can find bets in the brand new Explore tab, or you can also make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays and my personal favorite way to bet. And there is so much more. So get in on the action and visit fanduel.com/locked on and make your first bet a layup. Again, that's fanduel.com/locked on, and new customers will get a $150 back in bonus bets guaranteed. And all you got to do is just place a $5 bet. I love FanDuel, and I think that you will too. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, I know that we come to sports to escape some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk just for a moment, just for a second here, about prepping for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. I think that's scary. And I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than myself or a loved one. And I don't have kids, but I can only imagine for all of you parents out there how scary it is when your kids get sick and you might not have access to get the medication that you need or that they need. But thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among so many others. I mean, this stuff could happen to any of us. It's happened to me. I'm sure it has happened to you. So visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of at the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to get $20 off of your order. All right, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We're rolling along here. Locked On LSU. I mean, Brian Kelly is not messing around when it comes into the defensive coaching staff. Blake Baker as your DC. Bo Davis as your defensive line coach, Kevin Peoples from Missouri coming in as a co-defensive line coach to try and coach up those edge rushers, get to the quarterback. And now Corey Raymond back at LSU. Title unknown, I'm sure. It's going to be something to do with the secondary, with the corners, a combination of both. Recruiting will also be heavily involved in that, I am sure. So recruiting is a huge part of it. Who can Corey Raymond bring to LSU? I mentioned that, look, you got slim pickings going on in the locker room right now, especially when it comes to the corners. And we saw how detrimental lack of cornerback depth was to this team this past year. You had 4 injuries to your starting DBs, and it hurt you. You were forced to throw true freshmen out there just to have bodies out there in the secondary. Allow me to shoot for the moon. Allow me to wish upon the shiniest star in the sky. Allow me to be a little bit crazy. Caleb Downs is a former 5-star safety at Alabama. He's a freshman All-American, SEC Freshman Player of the Year, former 5-star, and the number 1 player currently in the transfer portal. Now, I know we're going to say we don't need any safeties. We need corner. Save it. Caleb Downs is different. That you don't pass up on a. Let me think of a quarterback here. You don't pass up a Patrick Mahomes because you got yourself a Kirk Cousins. No disrespect to Kirk Cousins. Caleb Downs was recruited by LSU in 2020, the 2020 season. Guess by who? Corey Raymond. That he does have that relationship there. He at least has had those underlying conversations. There's familiarity there. I'm not saying that they're bestie pops, but I am saying that there is familiarity there. And that Corey Raymond has a pretty rich history of bringing in the top DB talent to LSU. Now, I think I can see the writing on the wall that Caleb Downs will probably go to Georgia. Tre'Davious Robinson, who was the cornerbacks coach at Alabama, is now the co-defensive coordinator at Georgia. He has great relationship with T-Rob, and he's from the state of Georgia. So, I mean, the writing's on the wall there. It feels like Georgia is the front runner. I don't even know if LSU's on his radar, but that's the kind of target that I would expect a coach like Corey Raymond to bring in. And look, you're probably not going to get Caleb Downs. I would love that. I think that would be a complete game changer. I think that Caleb Downs is a complete game changer for any team that lands him. Just to put this into perspective, I was speaking with someone a couple days ago, and I asked him, what's kind of like the freak out level. And this was before Wednesday, when it seemed like every single Alabama starter was entering the transfer portal. I was asking, this was, I believe, Tuesday. I said, what's the freak out level? And he said, they're concerned, but they understand that players are going to leave, especially when the greatest coach of all time retires. But they're not going to freak out unless Caleb Downs enters the transfer portal. That is when it's like some serious, serious panic, some serious freak out. So if that's the line of demarcation for Alabama fans of panic versus non-panic, that is the kind of game changer that you could land. Now, I don't know if it's even on the table. I'm just throwing it out there. I told you I was wishing upon a star. But some other names to look at. Terry Bussey is one, a 5-star, and he can play DB. He can play receiver. He's really just overall an athlete. We've talked about him several times with Brian Smith, that he is one of the top targets in the 2024 class that has yet to commit. He was originally committed to Texas A&M, decommitted when Jimbo Fisher got fired. Now he's kind of taking a free agency tour. He is still out there going on the recruiting trail. Georgia is in the mix. LSU is also in the mix. If I'm Corey Raymond, the first thing that I'm doing once I get back to Baton Rouge, picking up the phone and I'm calling Caleb Downs. I'm picking up the phone and I'm calling a Terry Bussey. The other one to keep an eye on is also Trey Amos. He's a Louisiana kid that started his college career at ULL. He spent 3 years there and then transferred to Alabama. He's now a 4-star player in the transfer portal. Wasn't pursued by LSU when he was coming out of high school, which I think was unfortunately a pretty common narrative with the former regime at LSU of not pursuing some of the top talent in the state. But you'd be bringing in a guy with 4 years of experience, 1 year in the SEC West, which I guess is now kind of a moot point since there is no SEC West anymore. Played 10 games for Alabama this past year. You'd be bringing in talent and experience. So those are three guys that I'm looking at. Again, Caleb Downs is truly wishing upon a star. Like, I can sit up here and say, yeah, I would love to drive a Lamborghini. It doesn't really seem plausible, but I'm never going to say never, especially when you have a guy with as much respect as Corey Raymond does. Trey Amos, Terry Bussey in the 2024 class. Trey Amos would be eligible to play for you right away as a grad transfer. So those are some names to keep an eye on. I think it's a good thing that Corey Raymond is back at LSU, but look, it doesn't come without a whole lot of question marks. That I'm not just going to assume that everything is going to be all peachy and amazing and great and wonderful, and you're going to have a top 5 pass defense in the country in 2024 just because Corey Raymond is back. Because that's not what his recent track record has shown us. This league, the NFL, every sports league in America is a what have you done for me lately league. And right now, what Corey Raymond has done for Florida lately is coach a not very great cornerback room. So prove me wrong, Corey Raymond, or maybe even prove us right that you are the king of DBU and bring DBU back to LSU because Lord knows we have been a far cry from it. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And coming up in tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU, we'll chat with Brian Smith, the recruiting impact of bringing Corey Raymond back. Also, LSU Junior Days, what he's been seeing from those. Plus, I've seen a lot of Twitter rumors out there, a lot of social media rumors. The rumor mill is rumor milling. It's that time of year. If Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan to coach in the NFL, which seems like it's pretty plausible, could Brian Kelly be the next coach at Michigan? We'll discuss on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.